She was the invisible IT girl everyone called Miss Wi-Fi, until a 3:12 a.m. blast forced a decorated Marine to pick up an M4 and single-handedly turn the base's fate around. Rooftop ambushes, rocket strikes, and a one-woman counterattack that left insurgent lines in ruins. What happens next is almost unbelievable. I was just a systems contractor, one of many faces in the maze of forward operating base Ardent. The type no one noticed. My badge read C. Duran, Network Tech Support. Just another civvy geek keeping the comms clean, firewalls tight, and the printers from exploding. I wore my dark curls loose, hid behind oversized glasses, and buried myself in work like I had nothing else in the world. But of course I did. I wasn't always Claudia Duran. I used to be Staff Sergeant Claudia Velez, Marine Infantry, 2 tours through hell, and a Navy Cross they buried in a file stamped so many times with top secret you could barely read my name. But I walked away from that life because the killing had started to feel too easy, too natural, and that terrified me more than the bullets. When I signed up to work at FOB Ardent, tucked away in the rugged edges of Quran province, all I wanted was to disappear into the circuitry, be useful, but invisible. My job was glorified IT support, fix broken networks, reset passwords, teach young soldiers how not to get phished. Easy, peaceful, safe. I wore hoodies 2 sizes too big. Let my hair stay messy. The glasses weren't even prescription, just part of the disguise. And I played the part well. Soldiers called me Miss Wi-Fi or Doc Socket, depending on the day. They joked that I was allergic to sunlight. And I let them. Ardent wasn't a frontline base, but it wasn't a backwater either. We had Marines, Army, Air Force, and a dozen contractors like me. Just under 250 people all told. We pushed intel upstream, ran drone data through the pipeline, and occasionally processed prisoner intel. Mostly quiet. Until it wasn't. At exactly 0312, the blast hit. It shook the walls so hard my monitors cracked and dropped me flat on the tile before I even knew I'd moved. That's how fast muscle memory kicks in. Years of combat training hardwired into the spine. The boom was followed by the shrill wail of the base alarm. But not the indirect fire siren, the other one. The one I hadn't heard in years. Perimeter breach. I crawled to the wall, heart thumping. Outside the server room's slit window, I saw muzzle flashes light up the night. Then the garbled, panicked crackle of the emergency net in my earpiece. Tower 4 is gone. Repeat, 4 is gone. They're inside the wire, multiple hostiles, heavy weapons. My breath caught in my throat. They were inside. I stared at the weapon locker tucked behind the maintenance rack. It wasn't meant for me. Technically, it was for the occasional guard posted here at night. But I knew the code. I'd installed the lock myself. I opened it. An M4 carbine rested inside. For mags. Standard issue. My fingers hovered over the weapon for a beat too long. If I picked it up, it wouldn't just be to survive. It would mean becoming her again. But then I heard the screams. Real ones. Close. That was the end of hesitation. I grabbed the M4. In that moment, Claudia Duran, the harmless IT contractor, ceased to exist. The woman who stood up, tied her hair back tight, and slung that rifle across her chest, she had another name. She had no use for hiding. And the men storming this base were about to learn the difference. I slid the last mag into my vest and caught a glimpse of myself in a cracked monitor. Black tee, no hoodie, hair pulled into a sharp bun. Gone was the slouched, invisible network tech. This woman stood upright, alert, breathing in through her nose and out through her teeth like it was second nature. Because it was. I wasn't thinking about fear. I was calculating angles, listening for distance and movement like I had a second set of ears. Every nerve was alert, not frantic, just tuned. This was the old me, stepping out of the fog. And she knew what to do. I killed the server room lights and cracked the door. Emergency strobes painted the hallway in red. Smoke rolled down the ceiling like fog. Somewhere distant, automatic fire rattled in bursts. The air smelled of cordite and burning plastic. I switched my radio to the internal emergency band. This is Duran, server sector. Anyone receiving? Status? Static. Then a voice I knew. Sergeant Miles. He'd once offered me a Snickers during a network outage. One of the few who treated me like a person. Duran? The hell are you doing on this net? Armed and moving, I said flatly. Location? He was panting. We're holed up at the comms bunker. Took heavy casualties. They hit us hard. Organized. We need evac routes. Gunfire cut his voice mid-transmission. I exhaled, slow and steady. I moved. The training slid back into place without permission. Every step, every corner, every breath. I cleared hallways by instinct. Pie-slicing doors, covering angles. I reached the first junction and froze. Voices. Insurgent dialect. Fast, clipped commands. 2, maybe 3 of them coming down the hall. I ducked behind a stack of supply crates and raised the M4. 3 men turned the corner, rifles at the ready. They weren't expecting me. I squeezed 3 short bursts. 2 rounds each. They dropped before they knew I was there. I didn't check bodies. You learn not to. Confirming takes time. Time gets you killed. I pulled one of their slings off a shoulder. Spare mag, compatible. A win. I pushed forward. The base was folding in on itself. Chaos spreading from every direction. I glimpsed the medical wing burning, saw soldiers being dragged into the open near the motor pool, bound and forced to their knees. Executions. I sprinted up a stairwell into Admin 2, found a spot with elevation and cover, and set the rifle on a windowsill. I saw 15 insurgents. And 6 prisoners. They were going to shoot them. No speeches. No mercy. I took a breath. Then I opened fire. The leader dropped first. Then the executioner. Then the backup gunners. They scattered, shouting, diving for cover. They didn't know where the shots came from. That was the point. I shifted windows, picked off 2 more, then another. The captives used the chaos. 3 lunge for dropped rifles. It became a brawl, fists, elbows, pure desperation. I covered them as best I could. Then the M4 clicked empty. I dropped the mag, slammed a fresh one in, and kept firing. I saw one of the rescued soldiers, Private Young, drag a wounded comrade to safety. Another, Corporal Elias, picked up a dropped AK and started covering the others. Good. I hadn't saved them. I gave them a window. They did the rest. My radio flared again. Unknown shooter, admin building. Whoever you are, keep it up. You're buying us time. That was the first real sign of coordination I'd heard all night. I backed out of the room just as bullets chewed up the wall behind me. They'd finally traced the angle. Time to move. They could call me a ghost, but I was very much alive. I moved through the admin building like I belonged there, because in a way, I did. I'd helped rewire the comms closet, patch the HVAC systems when they overloaded. I knew every hallway, every flickering bulb, every busted vent cover. And now that knowledge kept me one step ahead of the insurgents hunting me. They thought they were chasing a scared tech. They had no idea they were chasing the one person on this base who knew every blind spot better than they did. Over the emergency net, the chaos was evolving. Not stopping, just shifting. Alpha rally point holding. We've got 20 personnel, 2 medics. Taking fire from the north sector. Need suppression. They were forming defensive clusters. That meant hope. I reached the top floor and kicked out a window pane just wide enough for my barrel. From here, I could see half the compound. And I saw it, the real threat. A technical truck with a mounted DSHG heavy machine gun. It was positioned dead center, covering the gap between Alpha and Bravo rally points. Any movement between them was suicide. That gun was cutting our base in half. I pulled in behind a ventilation duct, found the shooter's silhouette, and lined up the shot. One squeeze. He slumped forward over the gun. I adjusted aim. 5 quick rounds into the engine block. Black smoke coughed out, and the vehicle hissed to a stop. Insurgents scattered. My radio came alive. Unknown shooter, this is Alpha Actual. That was dead on. Identify. I hesitated. Speaking would mean shedding what was left of the lie I'd lived for 18 months. But lives depended on coordination. Alpha, this is Claudia Duran. Contractor. Server room tech. Former Marine infantry. 2 tours. Expert marksman. I'm on the admin roof. Visual on most of the base. Limited ammo. A pause. Then Duran. The voice was Captain Granger. As in, IT Duran. Affirmative. Silence. Then a shift in tone. Firm, focused. All right, Duran. We need suppression fire. We've got wounded trapped at Bravo. Medics can't cross. Can you cover the route? On your mark. He gave me a countdown and the path they'd take. I realigned. Found 2 enemy firing positions, both aiming straight at the corridor Bravo's wounded would move through. 3, 2, 1, go. Troops burst from the doorway at full sprint, 2 carrying stretchers, others limping under their own power. I didn't aim to kill. I aimed to make the enemy duck. Short, controlled bursts. A wall of lead that said, "Don't you dare raise your head." It worked. Fire from the enemy nest dropped off. Our people crossed the open stretch and reached Alpha's lines. "Good shooting, Duran," Granger said. "You just saved 8 lives." My last mag slid into the rifle. Then I heard it. Not on the radio, on the roof. Boots. They were coming for me. The rooftop door slammed open behind me. I didn't wait for faces, just ducked and sprinted across the roof line. Bullets tearing past, biting into the concrete where I'd just been. At least 6 insurgents had made it up the stairs. Maybe more. No time to count. I vaulted over the narrow gap between buildings and landed on the supply depot roof with a hard roll that rattled my teeth. No cover. No concealment. My last mag was half spent. I needed firepower, and fast. 20 meters ahead, the armory. A concrete block with steel-reinforced walls and enough weapons inside to arm a platoon. I'd been in it before, fixed their inventory tablets, upgraded the biometric scanners. And I still had my contractor keycard. I ran. Rounds chased me across the open rooftop. I fired one-handed behind me, sloppy, desperate bursts, just enough to scatter their aim. I hit the far edge of the armory and slammed down hard beside the rooftop hatch. Swiped my card. Green light. The hatch opened, and I dropped in like a stone. Inside was silent. Dim emergency lights buzzed overhead. I took a breath. Then, freeze. 3 rifles pointed at me. Friendly rifles. I raised my hand slowly. Claudia Duran. Contractor. Former Marine. I've got visual intel, last mag, and 0 time. One of the soldiers lowered his weapon slowly. Specialist Brandt. I remembered him. Armory crew. Used to chat about soccer. Duran? He said, disbelief thick. "You're the one on the radio? The one wrecking their flanks?" "Yep," I said, breathing hard. "That was me." "You got ammo and something heavier than this pea shooter?" He hesitated, then nodded toward the vault. Inside was a buffet of firepower. M240S, M249 saws, AT4S, grenades, cases of 5.56. I slung an M249 light machine gun over my shoulder, fed in the first belt of ammo, grabbed 2 spares, and handed out grenades to the soldiers. "What's your defensive layout?" I asked. Brandt pointed to a wall schematic. 3 entry points. We've got 1 man per. But they're testing the main gate, RPG team setting up. If they get through. They won't, I said, and marched to a firing window. I spotted the RPG gunner prepping to fire. A second team provided cover, crouched behind sandbags. I mounted the M249 on a desk, exhaled, and pulled the trigger. The belt-fed weapon roared to life, spewing 5.56 like a chainsaw on fire. The gunner dropped instantly. His support team followed. Then I swept the advancing group, trying to flank our side. They didn't expect heavy suppressive fire from the armory. They expected us to be hunkered down, terrified. Instead, I gave them a lesson in how a machine gun rewrites battlefield dynamics. Behind me, Brandt stared wide-eyed. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked. 2 tours, I said without looking away from the sights. This just happens to be my old day job. The M249 clattered dry. I yanked the feed tray open, slapped a fresh belt in, racked the charging handle, and got back to work. The insurgents outside were reorganizing, pushing toward the armory with more caution now, but with more numbers, too. From this window, I had a full sweep of the north wall, and what I saw sent a chill down my spine. More of them. A second wave was moving into place beyond the outer wire. Maybe 25, maybe more, blending into the shadows, using cover like pros. They weren't here to raid anymore. They were here to take the base. I keyed my mic. "Alpha Actual, this is Duran in the armory. Be advised, enemy reinforcements arriving. Estimated 24, North Sector staging area, 200 meters from breach." Captain Granger's voice came back, tight. "How can you see that?" "Night optics. Pulled them from the vault." A pause. "Can you interdict?" I looked at the rack. 3 at 4S, fully loaded. Anti-armor rockets meant to destroy tanks. Perfect for making a point. Affirmative. Give me 2 minutes. I grabbed the first launcher, popped the safety, and braced it on the window frame. My target, the staging area, clustered figures moving between 2 trucks. I exhaled, then fired. The rocket screamed across the dark and detonated in the center of the group. Flash, thunder, chaos. Before they could regroup, I fired again. A second warhead streaked into the ruins and exploded, sending bodies flying. Then silence. I waited, scanned, saw the survivors scatter. Alpha, reinforcement wave disrupted. Staging broken. No cohesion. Granger came back, louder now, clear respect in his tone. Outstanding shooting, Duran. What else do you have in that armory? I scanned the weapons racks. Enough to hold, I said. Maybe more. A thought was already forming, an audacious one. I'd led defenses before. Small unit tactics, room clearing, coordinated pushes under fire. This wasn't just survival anymore. We could win. I grabbed the radio again. Captain, we've got a chance. Their assault's shaken. Command is broken. If we hit now, hard, fast, we can break them completely. Are you suggesting a counterattack? I am. He hesitated. Duran, you're a contractor. Not tonight, I said. Tonight. I'm the one with the machine gun and the angle. Let me lead. Another silence. Then, what do you propose? I laid it out, suppressive fire from the armory to fix the enemy in place. Alpha pushes from the side, flanks them. My team forms a blocking position at the rear. We crush them between 3 fires. Granger didn't answer right away. I could almost hear the gears turning. Then, all right. We'll try it your way. We had 90 seconds to prep. I handed Brandt the spare at 4 and pointed to the fallback stairwell. If they push through the breach again, fire there. Do not wait for confirmation. He nodded, his face pale but steady. The other 2 soldiers in the armory, Private Ness and Corporal Duong, checked their positions and ammo. No one questioned me anymore. I wasn't IT to them. I was the one who saw the storm and didn't blink. I keyed the net. All elements, stand by. Execute on my mark. 30 seconds. The windows were prepped. One M240 on a folding table, the M249 on a crate stack, grenades laid out like candy. I would give them the sound and fury of a full defensive platoon, bluff the enemy into panic. 10 seconds. Alpha, confirm ready. Granger came through. Ready. I settled behind the M249. Execute. 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 I opened up with everything. The M249 spat fire, chewing through belt after belt, targeting the line of fighters still reeling from the earlier rocket strike. Then I ducked, rolled, and brought the M240 online, hammering rounds from the opposite window. Different sound, different angle. To them, it sounded like 2 machine guns in 2 fortified nests. They had no idea it was just me switching positions. From the east, I heard Alpha's team go loud. Muzzle flashes danced like fireworks. Then grenades, shouting, boots stomping through the dirt. Caught in the middle, the insurgents crumbled. Some tried to retreat, straight into Brandt's team. Others broke into the open and were cut down. My radio crackled. Duran, this is Granger. We're pushing through. Their line's folding. Keep the pressure up. I did. Every time they tried to regroup, I hit them again, pinning them, breaking cohesion, forcing them into retreat or surrender. 10 minutes. That's all it took. The same insurgents who stormed through our gates, sure of victory, were now scattering like rats from a flood. Some tossed their rifles. Some tried to run. Few made it past our net. Then, silence. The radio buzzed one last time. All stations, base secure. Hostile elements neutralized or retreating. Begin medevac and perimeter sweep. Good work. I leaned against the wall and let the M249 cool under my palms. Brass littered the floor. Smoke hung low in the room. My hoodie, long abandoned, was somewhere 3 buildings back. I didn't feel triumph or adrenaline, just the weight, the old weight. The armory was quiet now. No more shouting, no more gunfire. Just the soft ticking of overheated metal cooling in the night air. The scent of spent brass and scorched cloth lingered like a memory. Brandt approached slowly, his rifle lowered, eyes wide. Duran, he started, then stopped. I wiped sweat from my brow, smearing soot across my cheek. Say it. I don't know who you were before, he said, but you just saved the base. I nodded once and slung the M249 across my back. I was a Marine, I said. Then I wasn't. And now I guess. I still am, whether I like it or not. We regrouped at the command post an hour later. I'd changed into a fresh uniform, one of my spare contractor sets. My hands were still stained with gun oil and dirt. Captain Granger was waiting with a makeshift operations team, and around the room, the remaining defenders clustered, some bandaged, some limping, all staring at me with expressions I couldn't quite read. Respect, fear, wonder. I didn't want any of it. Granger began the debrief. Final count, 15 enemy Kia confirmed. 8 captured. The rest fled into the desert. He pointed to the map. We lost 4 of our own. 12 wounded. None critical, because our medics got moving when Duran bought them the time. He looked at me then. Claudia Duran, civilian contractor, accounted for 12 confirmed kills. Coordinated crossfire, provided overwatch, and broke the assault's core plan. I think it's fair to say we wouldn't be here if not for her. The room went quiet. I kept my face unreadable. Then Granger turned toward me. When you applied for this position, did you happen to mention you were a decorated Marine infantry vet? Former Marine, sir, I said flatly. And no, didn't seem relevant to IT support. He raised a brow. You ran a one-woman counterinsurgency tonight. I didn't flinch. I left that life behind because I was too good at it. And it was killing me inside. I came here to fix routers, not people. He paused, then said, you had a choice. You chose to fight. No, sir, I replied. I didn't have a choice. Not when people were screaming. From the back of the room, a voice spoke up. Ma'am. I turned. It was Elias, one of the prisoners I'd covered during the execution attempt. They were going to shoot us, he said, voice raw. I saw you up there. I saw what you did. Whatever you think you are, whatever you're trying to run from, you saved our lives. That makes you a hero. The word made my skin crawl. I didn't answer. I didn't have one. The next few days blurred. Reinforcements arrived. Engineers patched the breach. The medics did their rounds. A few news wires picked up fragments of the story, but no one really knew the full truth. Except the people in that room. And me. I tried to disappear again, back into my small barracks, my cooling fans and fiber cables. But it didn't work this time. Everywhere I walked, soldiers stiffened. Some nodded with respect. Others kept their distance. I heard whispers behind me. That's her. The ghost from the roof. IT Duran? No way. I hated it. Then, a week after the attack, I was summoned to the command post. Again, Granger was waiting, but he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a colonel I didn't recognize, and 2 civilians who radiated off-the-books energy. No name tags. No insignias. Sharp eyes that missed nothing. Miss Duran, the colonel said, we've reviewed the after-action reports, and, more importantly, your real file. Not the one we got when you signed your contract. He wasn't smiling. I stayed quiet. Marine Corps, for years, he continued. 2 deployments. Infantry, but attached to special operations units. Participated in 6 direct action raids. 1 Navy Cross, classified. Honorable discharge. Psych eval flagged for combat stress. Refused further counseling. Walked away. One of the civilians added, then you took a contractor position and vanished. But last week, you came back. I folded my arms. Is this a problem? The civilian gave a ghost of a smile. Not at all. It's an opportunity. They laid it out. They were building a new program, denied access operations. High risk, no uniform missions where official forces couldn't be seen. They needed operatives who could disappear into cover roles, assess threats, and act decisively. They needed people like me. You want me to be a spy who kills people, I said. The civilian's smile didn't falter. We call it Special Activities Officer. But yes. Granger's voice was quieter. You proved you're not just capable. You're necessary. What you did, we couldn't teach that. I stared at them. You're asking me to become what I ran from. No, the colonel said. We're asking you to use what you already are, for the right reasons. I thought of the server room. The first burst of gunfire. The screaming. The moment I picked up the M4. Not because I wanted to. Because I couldn't not. I swallowed hard. Give me time, I said. You have 24 hours, the civilian replied. After that, the offer expires. That night, I sat outside the perimeter wall, staring into the same dark stretch of desert where the insurgents had first broken through. It was quiet now, too quiet. But my mind played it on loop. The breach, the gunfire, the captives on their knees. Every shot I took. Every life I ended. 18 months I'd lived as Claudia Duran, harmless tech girl, just another face behind a monitor. I wore oversized sweatshirts, tied my hair messy, and let my silence do the hiding. It was a mask, one I thought would protect others from what I used to be. But that mask cracked the moment the first scream reached my ears. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just instinct. I could still hear Elias's voice from the debrief. Whatever you think about yourself, you're a hero to everyone still breathing because of what you did. I didn't feel like one. I didn't feel like anything, except tired and cornered by a truth I couldn't dodge anymore. I wasn't someone who could run from violence. I wasn't broken because I was good at killing. I'd become broken when I tried to pretend I wasn't. The next morning, I walked into the command post, cleaner than I'd been in days, wearing my standard contractor uniform, not because it made me invisible, but because I wanted to choose who I was, even if it was temporary. The colonel and civilians were waiting. I'll do it, I said, but on my terms. The colonel nodded. We're listening. 1. I choose my assignments. No blind orders. 2. I get full psychological support, real support, not checkboxes. 3. I don't become a weapon. I stay human, or I walk. The civilian who'd smiled before gave a small nod. Acceptable. Captain Granger stood nearby, arms crossed, watching. Maybe proud, maybe relieved, maybe just curious how it would all turn out. Welcome to the program, the colonel said. They handed me a packet. New ID, new clearance, new cover. I flipped through it all and felt the weight of it settle into my bones. This time, I wasn't hiding. I was choosing to stand in the places no one else could. 6 months later, I wasn't Claudia Duran anymore. My name was Isabel Reyes, logistics analyst, contracted through a shell company for port operations in a coastal city halfway across the world. My job, on paper, was to manage cargo manifests and track regional shipments. What I really did was listen, watch, cross-reference cargo containers that didn't match their tags, study dockworkers who got paid too much for too little, find anomalies and patterns that no one else noticed. And this time, when I found something wrong, I didn't report it up the chain. I dismantled it myself. 3 days after I uncovered a weapons trafficking ring feeding insurgent groups inland, the operation collapsed. 72 hours. That's all it took. I followed the network, mapped the players, and then, one by one, cut their lines. Fake bills of lading were exposed. Dirty warehouse foremen disappeared. Arms crates meant for warlords vanished into controlled burns in the desert. The people responsible never saw me coming, because they didn't look at the woman with the clipboard and glasses. And if they did, if they noticed the way I moved, the way I watched, they noticed too late. I didn't feel proud or righteous, but I did feel something I hadn't in a long time. Purpose. And this time, I wasn't doing it out of reflex. I chose this. With support. With parameters. With the quiet understanding that some people were built to do terrible things, but not just for destruction. To stop something worse. I still fixed systems. I still traced signals. I still blended in behind screens and keys and ID cards that changed every few months. But now I understood. I wasn't a ghost hiding from the world anymore. I was a blade, hidden in plain sight. And if they ever came for me again, I wouldn't hesitate. Because I'd already proven that when the world goes dark, someone like me steps into the light. Not for glory, not for medals, but because silence isn't an option. I was once just the tech girl no one noticed. Now I'm the one they never see coming. Until it's already too late. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.